up, guys? Welcome to another episode of MMA Heart. I am Mad Max, and you all know who this is. He is the Primetime, the one and only Adam Posener joins the show today. How you doing, man?
Not too bad, man. How are you?
Doing good, man. Thanks. Man, we're just 1 week, exactly 1 week away out of your fight. Last Thursday, you finished David Briones in the second round. Just wondering, man. First of all, what were the celebrations like after the win? What did you do? What did you do on Thursday night, and how did you celebrate this victory?
Yeah, I mean, I went out. I got some good food mostly this week. Mostly just recovering from, the training camp, the mental stresses, the physical stresses. Catch up with family and important people in my life that I maybe didn't get to see as much throughout the training camp as, preparing yourself for a cage fight is a lot to prepare for. So going out there and doing that, yeah, no, just catching up on things and just going from there and yeah, getting back to it soon.
So no crazy hangouts in the clubs, no Grenville
No,
nights out,
I'm
nothing
not
like
into
that.
that stuff, to be honest. I'm not really into that.
And Adam, BFL announced that we can expect to see you at BFL 81. Just wondering if you have any ideas at all, about who you could be fighting next.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I feel BFL is probably going to be like around the September time. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so I don't know if it'll be. I don't know who my opponent will be. Whether it's a top guy in the division, whether it's another guy out of town. I'm fairly open on the most part. Yeah, so I mean, we'll see what happens, and once I get an offer, then we'll go from there.
And things turned upside down in your own welterweight division on Thursday as well. Dejan Kajic got finished by Mac Laursen, and also Rodrigo Sezinando defeated Dario Sinagoga in the first round too, and said that he will most likely move down to lightweight. In an ideal world, what would you like next? Would you like a title shot immediately against one of these top guys, or would you rather have a slower build up and a slower escalation to those top positions?
Yeah. No, it was a very crazy night for the division. Ashton Charlton also looked very good as well. Between those three, I mean, they were all pretty good performances. Seeing Dan go down the way he did was a bit upsetting for obviously for everyone in BC. But it's a part of the fight game, right? Maybe I think if he wants a rematch, he more than deserves it. He was, however many years it was, 7, 8 years, he was defending that title. If he wants that rematch, he more than deserves it, and I think anyone will say that. As for Rodrigo, Rodrigo also had a very good performance. I did not expect him to go out there and breeze through Dario essentially. Um, yeah, no, if he goes to 155, there are some very good fights for him down there. And as for myself, I mean, again, I'm not too really picky on who it is. I mean, if they gave me a title shot, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily take the title shot at this point in time, as I only have two fights. These
Yeah.
guys have 5, 6, 7, 10 plus fights, right? So again, I only have two, and now my cage time I think is probably around like 20 minutes now,
Yes.
amateur and pro. So honestly, I want at least one more. I think getting one more in me is reasonable, and then seeing what the title situation's like, we'll go from there.
And Adam, you have 7 fights in your career. All seven are finishes. You just finish these guys, and these guys, can't seem to handle you. But another, elite level grappler like yourself is Rodrigo Sezinando, coming from Brazil. Just wondering, how do you think you would match up against Rodrigo? And would you like to ever test yourself, against someone, of that caliber too?
100%, 100%. Rodrigo would be a very that would be a very fun fight, I think, for both of us. If he knows who I am. I mean, I haven't really talked to him in person too many times.
Hmm.
It'll be funny. I'll be talking to someone. He'll greet whoever I'm talking to, but he won't greet me. So
Oh.
um, maybe I'm too much of a beautiful motherfucker for him. Maybe that's why he's not talking to me as much. But um, yeah, no, Rodrigo is a very skilled jiu-jitsu fighter, and I think it would be a competitive fight, down the line, right? Again, he's 7-1. He's on the verge of contender series. So again, he seems like he's going to 155, and to be honest, I don't think I'm doing 155. So
Yeah.
170 seems to be a good division for me. But who knows? Maybe he wants to stay at 170. Maybe he changes his mind. I'm not so choosy on opponents. What I'm more so focused on is my big goal. Right, first big goal is getting the title. The next big goal is making a major platform, and then from there, becoming a world champion. So I'm not really too picky on names.
And you mentioned that you want to get the BFL title by the end of this year. In an ideal world, that would be the case. Just wondering, also how do you think you match up against Mac Laursen, and would you like to, avenge Dejan Kajic's loss, and eventually maybe a couple fights from now fight someone like Mac Laursen, or would you also like to, an opportunity for that, BMF RMF title as well, and maybe fight Ashton Charlton?
Yeah, I mean, I train with both Ash and Dan. Like I've been training with those guys since my early amateur fights. So getting those guys would be very cool. And again, they have very big records. So at least one more fight of a guy similar experience, similar record to me, and then we'll see from there. I mean, again, I'm not too picky on the names. I'm more so focused on the big goal. Whoever is the opponent towards that big goal, that's who I'll take.
And also, Adam, just wondering about growing up in Vancouver. What was life growing up, in Vancouver? Any street fight stories that you could tell me about? Did you ever get into street fights?
Not too many. I mean, I've almost been in a couple, but then I think the other guys have realized that
Mm,
they made a mistake trying to fight me,
right, right.
because I've done this for a long time, and I think yeah, people realize that they realize they want to fight me, and then they realize they stand across from me, and it's not what they want to do. So yeah, I don't really have any major street fight stories, unfortunately, but yeah, no, nothing really crazy. So
Would if you were in a street fight, would you, do that jiu-jitsu stuff as well? Would you hit the ground, or would you, keep it standing? Because, back where I come from in Kyrgyzstan, like, they say that, in a street fight, you should never go on the ground because, someone can jump in and, kick you in the head or whatever. So would you rather, stand up in that case?
yeah, 100%. I mean, again, it depends on the environment. I mean, if it's just like a one-on-one and nobody's in the area, then it doesn't really matter. You're just fighting one-on-one. But if there's like, a crowd of people, 5, 6, 7 people around you, then maybe it's not the best. I mean, in
Hmm.
my opinion, because I teach martial arts as well, I always teach my guys to always avoid the situation if you need to. These fighting things that I show are not meant to be on the streets. They're meant
For
if
sure.
you absolutely need them, you can use the techniques that I'm showing you. But it's also not cool to just beat people up. But if
Hmm.
you again in a situation, if we have to do it, we do. But we
Hmm.
don't chase it.
Hmm. And Adam, of course, UFC is on your mind. Today, marketability is a very big thing for fighters as well to get to the UFC. And I mean, you're very young, 7 finishes as well, undefeated. Just wondering, how are you with social media, and would you ever, considering, doing a prime time, podcast, and starting to build your own podcast, and do stuff like that to build your
I've thought about
marketability?
starting like my own. Yeah, I've started about starting my own podcast talk show. But yeah, no, definitely it is something that I would have to take more seriously. But at this point in time, it's like I got to get my. I want to be a bit more experienced with fighting first, where it's gonna matter. Right now,
Mhm.
I just feel it doesn't really matter whether I'm on it or not. And right now, it focus purely needs to be on fighting because
Mhm.
again, I only have 2 fights. I'm not going to be making the UFC in my next fight. I'm not going to make
Mhm.
the UFC after my last fight.
Yeah.
So maybe when I get 4 or 5 under me, and then maybe a win can get me in the UFC, then yeah, definitely I'll have to start marketing it more and going from there. Really.
Yeah, and you're just getting started, but in your career, but there's already comparisons between yourself and people talk about GSP, Rory Macdonald, and
Yeah.
all that hype around your name, and that the hype is real. Just wondering, man, how do you carry all that pressure and all that all of those expectations on your shoulders? Because man, at the end of the day, you're still a young kid, just 19 years old, and just wondering how do you carry all of that pressure, and how how difficult is it for you, to carry all of that, and to be to truly honor GSP and follow his footsteps.
Yeah, I think it's a very cool comparison to be compared to guys like GSP and Rory McDonald, because Rory was one of the fighters that I really liked watching growing up, because we started fighting around the same age. Granted, he turned professional right away because there's no amateurs, but he had his first fight at 16, mine was at 17. And his first couple fights he was just breezing through guys. And it took him till like 9, 10 and 0 as a professional to have that first loss against Condit. And even then he evolved from that and became whatever he was, number 2 in the world, and he almost beat Robbie Lawler for the title in their second fight. So to be compared to someone of that level and that magnitude, I think it shows that I'm going to be on that level in the future.
And how important is it for you, to keep that O and to remain undefeated? Because we see guys like Seri City, Mike Malott, these guys, Canadian guys, they get to the UFC, and then in the UFC they get really tested, and then they get broken, and then they lose. What needs to happen for you to to have a more successful UFC run, and to get that UFC title eventually?
It's about timing at this point in time. Right now, my goal is just to be active, and then whenever I get that shot at the title, right, just making sure that once I get the title and the UFC is very close, I want to make sure that when I get the call, I'm more than ready. I don't want to. I'm not trying to get there soon. I'm not trying to get there, on this season of Contender Series.
Mm.
I want to be fully ready. I want to be a fully UFC caliber fighter by the time I get that call. So whatever that means, focusing on the skill sets in between fights, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to just constantly evolve, and I feel like I am doing that right now. I feel like I've evolved from my last fight in February till this one in May. I feel
Absolutely.
like, in 3 months I've evolved a ton everywhere. And it showed. I was, in that February fight, it was my pro debut. It was, a fairly big spotlight. Granted, I mean, it was on the undercard, but it's not a big deal. Pro debut is a pro debut. You only get one pro debut, and I
Yeah.
still made a good showing. And then after that fight, I knew that it was going to be tough to get opponents, and that's why I ended up fighting a guy like David Briones, who had 8 fights. He gave Naveed a hard time. He was supposed to be my toughest test and all this, and I went out there. Yeah, it took a round longer, but it still was a very good performance. And you don't see Darce strangles that often in MMA. And
Yeah.
to do that, I mean, I know for a fact that in on that BFL card, I was the only one that got it, which
Mm.
is pretty cool. Um, but yeah, no, definitely in terms of getting to the UFC, I want to be fully ready when I'm there. And once I get there, then taking the right fights. Granted, you kind of have to take who they give you. So that's why, again, I want to be ready for anybody when I'm in the UFC and when I get signed.
Mhm. And Adam, could you tell me about the sacrifices that you have to make, to do what you do? Being a young man, being a young kid, just fresh out of high school, you probably have friends, they call you out, to go out on, to go out to clubs and whatever. But you have to stay disciplined, you have to stay dedicated, you have to train. Uh, just how much of a different lifestyle is it for you, and how much dedication and sacrifice does it take? What did you have to eliminate from your life, and what are some things that you had to give up to do what you do?
Yeah, my friends actually really like fighting, and most of my friends I've known for a long time. So, they've known that I was going to be a professional fighter and a UFC fighter and do all these things. I've been saying this for a long time to them, and now that we're actually doing the damn thing. So, um, yeah. So realistically, they don't really, if I say no to things, they know that they don't even bother asking me anymore.
Mm.
That I just, I've said no enough times that they're fairly understanding of it, and they understand what the goal is, and it's showing with my performances that I'm doing the damn thing. So yeah, they get it on the most part. So yeah, nothing really to sacrifice overly. Obviously after the fights, I can see them as much as I want and catch up with them, but yeah, they're understanding people.
Mhm. And Adam, I know that you play UFC 4. I don't think that Triple M has the chance of beating you inside the octagon, but how good of a chance do you think I have at beating you, in a PlayStation game? And who is your go-to fighter that you pick when you play UFC 4?
I think it's UFC 5, but because
UFC
I think
5,
they're
yeah.
yeah UFC 5 because I know UFC 4. I actually like UFC 4 a little bit more. I like the controls a
Yeah.
little bit better. But
Mhm.
as for us playing each other in UFC, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a little bit rusty because I haven't played as much in the last couple months
Mhm.
because due to the training camp and all
Sure.
that. But like I don't know. I think you would probably beat me. I feel like
Mhm.
you. I don't know what kind of time you put into it, but I know for a fact that I don't put as much time as I probably should, because, between all my training sessions and, you know, teaching my students and all that, it's, the game is more so just as like a wind down kind of before
Mhm.
bed kind of thing. It's not really as much of a set gaming time, unfortunately. So as much as I love the game, I'm not on it enough. So I don't know.
Hmm. And Adam, I have a couple last questions for you. Just wondering, everyone knows that all the real money is in boxing today. Just wondering, eventually when you do get to the UFC, maybe 3, 4 years from now, would you ever consider, boxing as well and doing some boxing fights too?
Like legitimate boxing or like Jake Paul boxing?
Whichever one,
Yeah, the money in a Jake Paul fight would be pretty good.
Hmm.
I'd love, a couple $1 million, but at the same time, it's not my objective or focus right now. Obviously, if I get to my goal of being a world champion, which I think I will down the line, not sure when, but I think it will happen. Yeah, I'll take a money side quest. Why not?
And also, man, just wondering about your relationship, with everyone at FKP, Jaden Martin, Coach Franco, Kyle Machado, how close are you guys? And, could you tell me a little bit about, Jaden Martin and what is he like as a friend, as a person? Because, you know him for many years.
Yeah, no, I've known Jaden. I think I've known Chris a little bit longer. I've seen
Hmm.
Chris throughout like tournaments and stuff. I've seen Jaden too, but like I never really. The first time I met Jaden, I think I've known Jaden for about like maybe a year and a bit now.
Hmm.
Um, we've talked about training for a long time, and then for our fights in February, we set it up, and we were training like the most then. We didn't get to train as much this time just because of, scheduling and Kyle going to the UFC in Vegas, and they trained in Vegas, and and that's a legitimate reason to for a mishap that they're training in Vegas. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
Getting to train in the PI at Extreme Couture, and yeah, so I like those guys. Those guys are very skillful, very knowledgeable of the game. Um, I'm excited to see who Jaden fights on this card. I have a feeling, I don't know anything yet, but I mean, I think with back-to-back knockouts, I think a title shot would be reasonable against whoever it is. Um, yeah, so I'm excited to see that. And for Kaio, I mean, he's had two very good fights in the UFC, and yeah, Chris Franco has done some really good things with those guys, and he's a very knowledgeable guy. Obviously, he's been in this for however many years it is. So yeah, he's coached some very good fighters.
And Adam, when I met you, even though you're so young, you have this kind of like this aura of, being in like you have this aura, you're so calm, you're so confident that you're gonna win, and you just have you just have this aura like you're unbeatable, and you just have this calmness around you. Just wondering, where does that come from? Where does all the confidence come from? And of course, we all know about your special relationship with your father, who is also a lifelong martial artist. If you can just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've done jiu-jitsu comps for a long time. I've done like tons of I've been competing for a long time in jiu-jitsu, and even like before back in the pancration tournament days, probably about like 4 years ago now. It's basically like MMA in with sparring gear on. Like it's just like
Mhm.
1 3-minute round, and it was really good to get that experience going into MMA, going into my first fight. But unfortunately, the athletic commission shut it down, and COVID happened. So, yeah, no, definitely having that experience definitely helped me going into my first fight.
And my last question is, I'm from Kyrgyzstan myself. It's a small country south of Russia. Just wondering, would you ever consider, visiting that part of the world? And what do you know about that part of the world? Would you ever consider visiting places like Dagestan? And, how much do you think it would benefit you, to train with those guys and, do some judo, sambo, freestyle wrestling? And how much have you already traveled in your life? Do you travel often?
Yeah, I would love to go to that part of the world. I haven't yet. I know. How do you say it? Kyrgyzstan?
Kyrgyzstan, yeah, that's right.
Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, I think that's like where Valentina Shevchenko and those
Rafael
fighters are at.
Fiziev, yeah.
Yeah, Fiziv, that's one. Yeah,
If
that's
another guy who was 18-0, all finishes as well, is Shavkat Rahmanov as well,
yes,
in welterweight as well.
Shavkat.
Yeah,
That guy
yeah.
is very good. I mean, I really like Shavkat. Yeah, no, that's definitely a unique part of the world. And as for Dagestan, yeah, definitely doing some sambo and judo. I mean, those guys are insane fighters. I think we can all say that they're very, I think they hold the ultimate standard of MMA. They're very disciplined with their training. They don't smoke. They don't go out late on weekends. I heard a story of Bilal on the Joe Rogan Experience
Hmm.
podcast that he's talking about like how if a fighter shows up to Khabib's classes like tired,
Yeah.
then Khabib will take their phone away for the day, and then the next day they come back to training and they're actually like
Mhm.
slept well. Then he gives their phone back. So that's some
Yes.
pretty high level stuff. That's some
Yeah.
pretty that kind of thing is nuts. But I also really like that kind of thing. I think
Mhm.
it's very they're very tight as a gym, as fighters and people. They do everything together, which I really respect. So I would
Mhm.
definitely love to get that experience.
And can we get a final message for all the Adam Primetime Posener fans out there worldwide, everyone supporting you?
um, yeah, if I have any fans worldwide, thank you for watching my fights. Keep tuning in because I'm only getting better. And fight by fight, we're gonna be getting closer to that big stage, UFC, PFL, etc. Wherever it is, we're gonna make it to the top, and we're gonna be a world champion one day.
And huge honor to talk to you, huge pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Hope to see you in September. Hope to see you at BFL 81, man.
100%. Let's do it, man.